This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by Harry's, the shaving gear you will respect, not throw away. To get $5 off your first order, go to harrys.com and use the offer code MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is a talk of the Mac community. I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, the whole way from Hawaii, or back from Hawaii, the nimble photographer himself, Mr. Derrick Story. Derrick, it's great to see you.
Yeah, great to be here, Chuck. Thanks for having me.
Hawaii, Derrick, it's a tough life out there on the West Coast.
It is. Maui is 5 minutes. 5 minutes feels like 5 minutes. 5 hours from my doorstep. So it's not that bad. It's not that bad at all.
Yeah, I would say not. It's a little longer for us here on the East Coast and even farther from Europe. But yeah, got to try it sometime.
Well, I just went the other way, so I was over in Europe for a couple of weeks before that. So I had the long flight, but at least we went up over the Arctic cap, so it's that makes it a little bit better.
Yeah. Now, how are you doing with the time zone changes, having gone from Europe to Hawaii over the space of a few weeks?
Yeah, Hawaii isn't that bad for me. It's 3 hours. The worst part about it is that I'm really behind the rest of the world when I'm in Hawaii. So it gets to the point, even when I'm on vacation, I still publish. So it gets to the point where I publish at midnight before I go to bed, kind of thing, and it's about right for the East Coast. But coming back from Europe and going to Europe is the hardest one for me. Because I usually get there in the morning. And then you have to stay awake until regular whatever bedtime is, and you end up being awake for 28, 30 hours. That's hard. That's hard. That's the time change I do not like. But if you stay over long enough, then it's worth it.
Yeah, that's true anywhere. So,
yeah,
but
true.
But boy, sometimes coming home can be tough.
Yeah, well, I'm lucky. I don't have to check into an office, right? So I come here to my studio, and so my first couple days back, if I'm not 100%, then I don't have anyone looking at me. So I have it a little bit easier that way.
Yeah, good. Nice that you've arranged it that way.
Yeah, I have a cat here, and she'll give me the greasy eye if I'm not, on target with her food. But other than that, I'm okay.
Well, Derrick, I was on vacation, and you were out of town when the news came down that Aperture is being, I guess, no longer developed by Apple, no longer advanced by Apple. And I immediately thought of you as the perfect person to talk about this. And I said pre-show too. I still remember the story about the morning you were preparing for an Aperture talk at Macworld, and they released a new version that morning. I mean, so you've been kind of stung a little bit by the Aperture thing along the way, and I just wonder what your reaction is to this.
Well, it's life with Apple, in all honesty. Apple, we love their dynamism, right? We love, except when they do something like this, and then we all go, hey, why are they so, I don't know what the word would be about it, but maybe disruptive, with our workflow. But if once you step back and sort of look at things, and we should talk about those things today. There are reasons for all of this, and there are options moving forward, and it's not a bad thing. And the thing that I've been thinking about since Apple made it official is that, well, good, at least we have movement somewhere. Right? I mean, because for the longest time, we were just sitting there, in all honesty, dead in the water with Aperture. My joke is, well, now they've just made it official that there'll be no further development. But, I mean, it really feels like it's been that way unofficially for quite some time. So now we have a plan. Now we know what's going on, and we can talk about it. And that's what we'll do today.
Let's start, though. You take an interesting approach to it. Let's start with the reasons, because you're right. This is not the first time Apple has discontinued software. I'm not sure if it's the first time it's discontinued pro-level software. I know there was the whole Final Cut kerfuffle a while back, but that really wasn't discontinued. That was a rewrite. This is just where they've said, we're not going to do it anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they may have done something in audio. I don't recall, but you're right. This is not a typical situation. I'm glad you brought up Final Cut though, because I think they learned some lessons from the Final Cut 10 kerfuffle, and that is that okay, if you're going to move on and rewrite, that's fine, but don't discontinue, don't make it unavailable, the software that people are depending on. And that's, one of the things that we looked right away into for this transition, and they seem to have learned their lessons because Aperture's is not going anywhere. In fact, it'll be supported by Yosemite. So, that's a big improvement. I'm glad to see that they might have learned a couple things from the Final Cut mess.
Right, right. How about the successor to? I don't know if it's a successor to Aperture or a successor to iPhoto or a successor to both. The upcoming Photos app. We all know so little about it, but do you have any? I won't ask for any inside insight, but any feelings about Apple needing to support the semi-pro and pro level photographers?
I think that's going to be interesting. I don't have an answer for you. I know that within Apple there are a lot of people that are, it's very important that they support the pro photographer. What comes out of the final mix, I think, remains to be seen. I think photos in the beginning is not going to be up to the level of Aperture in terms of pro capability, but it's also a V1. And if you think about Aperture, you think about Lightroom, you even think about the evolution of iPhoto. V1s are usually try to get it out the door with the things that you need to do initially, and then it remains to be seen how development goes. So I think the real clue for those of us that are do photography as part of our living will be V2 and beyond, and then we'll really get to see what's going to go on with this app. And I don't know yet.
Yeah, it's tough. So I don't know. What are you telling people? Do you tell them to hold on and wait? Because, as you said, Aperture is supported in Mavericks. It's going to be supported in Yosemite. Do you feel like there's an urgency to move somewhere, or do you think it's okay to hang in there with the understanding that as people put work into their libraries, a lot of that work may not, and I'm thinking about editing, color correcting, those kind of things, may not translate over to another option outside of the Apple ecosystem?
Well, yeah, right now, and I'll just go also not only what I'm saying, but what I'm doing for me, because I have thousands and thousands and thousands of images in Aperture. I'm not doing anything right now, in anything different. We were just talking about my travel earlier, and I just finished uploading thousands of images into my Aperture library. And just moving along as I normally would, and that's what I plan on doing. No, as soon as I heard that Aperture was going to be supported in Yosemite, then I knew that okay, then we don't have to worry about the immediate future. We have time to see how this all plays out. It's not easy to move from Aperture to Lightroom for those that are thinking about it. And then I've been watching that, and in all honesty, if you've been happy with Aperture, moving to Lightroom might not be something that you enjoy as much. I mean, Lightroom has a tremendous following. They have a big community. It's bigger than Aperture's community, certainly. And those folks that are using Lightroom already, most of them enjoy using it. But it's funny, the folks that have been using Aperture and iPhoto enjoy using Aperture and iPhoto, and there's a reason why they have stuck with it. So automatically moving over to something that you normally wouldn't choose anyway, to me at this point doesn't make a lot of sense. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And I'm not so sure you're going to be happy when you get there. So I would wait and see. I would continue to use Aperture or iPhoto, depending on what you're doing. And then let's see what Apple does. I mean, I do think that they have earned the benefit of the doubt over the years. We over and over again we have questioned them about getting rid of the floppy drive, and on and on and on, but in the end, 3 out of 4 times they've been right. The moves have been good moves, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt on this and see what happens, knowing that for the time being, at least through the lifespan of Yosemite, I'm in good shape.
All right, so we'll leave the 800-pound gorilla in the room on the chair for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any other options other than sticking with Aperture and iPhoto or moving to Lightroom? Are there any other utilities out there that you see that are viable alternatives?
It depends on what you're looking for. And, the thing that I think makes Aperture and Lightroom so special, and they're both very special applications, is that they tackle photo management, they tackle image editing, and they tackle output, with equal strength. And so they do all of these things. So essentially, most photographers only need either Aperture or Lightroom to do 95% of their work, and that's unique. It's the minute you start looking at other things, you start looking at let's say a bridge, Photoshop workflow, or something like that. You end up starting to kind of hook together different applications to get your work done. To me, that's a real step backwards. I mean, that's moving back to 1997, which, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go back to 1997. So in terms of applications that really handle the whole thing, I think those two are the best. And I think for that reason, it's worth kind of hanging out and seeing what's going to happen. Yeah, if you want to put together something using other software, there's a lot of other software out there that's quite good. But they tend to be better at one thing than another. They tend to be better at image editing or organization. It's hard to get the whole package in one download like you can with Lightroom or Aperture.
Okay, so let's tackle Lightroom.
Mm-hmm.
Your comments about you may not be happy if you move.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to see what those are. Honestly, the first thing that comes to my mind, of course, is Adobe's model right now of you basically are running the software. So if I make that move, I'm pretty much committing to X number of dollars per month for as long as I want to mess with digital photos, and unless somebody writes a really great conversion utility. So that's quite a commitment. I'm not sure I'm ready to make. I'm not sure I want to make, even if I end up having to abandon Aperture.
It's Adobe's in transition too, right? They're trying to figure out how to keep moving forward. Now the promise they have made to the photography community is that there will continue to be a standalone version of Lightroom, so that you don't have to go to Creative Cloud to use Lightroom. If you do want to go to Creative Cloud, there's the Photographer Special, I call, where you get Photoshop, Lightroom, and Lightroom Mobile for, I believe, $9.99 a month. And I think that's what they're dinging my credit card for right now. And because I teach this, I have it and I use it. But the thing about the standalone version of Lightroom, you can probably get it if you hunt around for $129 or so. But we don't know at what level it's going to be supported. See, that's the thing. And so you could be independent and have a standalone version. Might be great for a year, might be great for 2 years. After that, we really don't know how it's going to work out. And we do know that you won't be able to use Lightroom Mobile without Creative Cloud membership. That's already in place. So suddenly, as Lightroom Mobile is only at 1.1 right now, and that runs on both iPads and iPhones. As that develops and gets more and more interesting, and as we evolve more toward tablet and iPhone photography, then suddenly you might go, Lightroom Mobile is like really neat. I want it. Then you're going to have to make the move to Creative Cloud anyway. So there is definitely a financial situation here that has to be dealt with. I think if my feeling is, if you're going to move to Adobe products, you might as well do the photographer special, pay the $10 a month, and just get used to it, because I think in the end they're going to get you anyway. And so you might as well have the advantages of the storage space and the mobile apps and all the goodies that you get with it right now.
So, how do you work, Derrick, for your typical workflow? Do you? I mean, obviously. Well, let me scratch that. Aperture, at least the way I use it for a little bit of photo correction. I'm not a guy that'll spend hours on a photo to try to get it decent. I'll do a quick lighten, quick darken, quick enhance, and kind of go from there. You are obviously a lot more serious about it. So, do you do that in Aperture now? Do you do it in Lightroom? Do you do it in both?
I prefer Aperture. I love image editing in Aperture, and it's interesting to me that still I'm learning new things about it. Still learning little tricks. I'll give you a perfect example of something that it wasn't that long ago that I figured out with it. We have a vignette tool in Aperture. It's very nice, but it's a whole vignette, and so sometimes I only want maybe the top part vignetted, and I want the bottom part. I don't want it to get darker, and finally one day it dawned on me that in Aperture the vignette tool has a brush, and so then I can use brush away for the part of the vignette that I don't want to use, and so suddenly the very innocent looking vignette tool's more like a gradient screen. And there's just lots of little things that about that application that are very powerful, that unless you use it all the time, you probably won't discover them. And I don't need to go to Photoshop, and I don't need to go to Lightroom very often. When I do go to Lightroom, it's usually for one of two things. It's either noise reduction, which is very good in Lightroom, or it's going to be the lens corrections, which sometimes are useful to get rid of distortion. And Aperture says it has noise reduction, but it doesn't. It's not noise. It's a silly. It's like a placebo slider, and they don't have lens corrections at all. So there are occasions when I need to go to Lightroom, but it's rare. When I use Lightroom, I'm using Lightroom, I'm thinking of Lightroom Mobile, and I'm thinking of a whole different workflow. It's not because there isn't something image editing wise I can't do in Aperture.
How about the organizational capabilities of Lightroom as compared to Aperture? Better, worse, different?
Well, Aperture's strength is organization. I don't think there's any app on the market that is as good as Aperture at organizing hundreds of thousands of photos. I mean, it is top dog there. The library module in Lightroom can't touch it. Can't touch it. It doesn't even come close. By the same token, when we're talking about image editing tools, I would say that the develop module in Lightroom is stronger overall than the image editing tools in Aperture. So they get the nod on the image editing stuff, but Aperture far and away is the best organizational tool. And that's the part that I think a lot of us are really going to miss when Photos comes out, because I don't anticipate that Photos is going to be as good in that area.
At least when it first comes out.
At least when it first comes out. And I'm glad you added that, because, we'll wait and see. However, the only thing about organization, that generally goes into the application pretty early. You know what I mean? Because it's sort of the skeleton of the app. So, I will be looking closely at Photos and how they set up organization there. Now, obviously, we haven't talked about the things that we're going to get, and we'll get to that in a minute, that we don't have right now. But that organizational aspect of Aperture is amazing.
Go back to the lens correction for a second. I think there are a lot of folks who are not serious photographers that may not completely understand that part. Can you give us just a quick explanation of that and maybe why it is not in Aperture?
Sure. So, when lens manufacturers design lenses, it's like everything else in photography. There's trade-offs, right? So, if you want a lens that lets in a lot of light that isn't too big, you usually have to give up something, on one end or the other, or price or whatever. And one of the things that lenses often, one of the trade-offs is a little bit of curvature, a little bit of distortion. And there's two types. There's pincushion and there's barrel distortion. And a lot of times you won't really notice it. Sometimes when you shoot a building or a wall, you might see a little bit of curvature one way or another. And that's just inherent. Now, sometimes camera manufacturers will correct that in the camera, but sometimes you need to do it outwardly. And so what Lightroom has done is that it has built in these profiles for all the popular lenses, and you can find your lens there in Lightroom and then apply distortion correction so that the image kind of looks more like it did to your eye, and it doesn't have any of that distortion, and it works out really well. Now, why it isn't in Aperture, we don't know, because we do know that Apple has that technology. They were actually playing with that capability years ago. Why it never made it into Aperture is a mystery to me, actually.
This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by Harry's, the shaving gear you will respect, not throw away. Yesterday I told you about how Harry's has spoiled me, and my experiences with having to go without their razor and blades for a week. There's another way that Harry's has spoiled me, and that's with their shave plans. Remember how I told you about having to hunt someone down to crack open the razor safe at the pharmacy? You would think the blades are made of gold rather than steel. And that was only because I knew I had to buy a razor right then and there, or I would have left. But at home, a different issue surfaces. A supply issue. Because when you use that last razor blade in the pack or the box or whatever, it's usually to put it into the razor right before you shave. And then you forget it was the last blade as the pressures of the day come crashing in. You remember that it was the last blade when you need to replace it. And then you don't have one. And that, inevitably, is the day of the big meeting, the important interview, the hot date, whatever. And you're stuck shaving with an old, worn-out blade. And you have another trip to the drugstore razor safe to look forward to, or dread. That won't happen with Harry's. Once you find out how great their shaving cream, razors, and blades are, you want to sign up for a Harry's shave plan so you get the supplies delivered to you automatically. They ship right to your door, you put them in the bathroom cabinet, and they're there when you need them. No razor safe cracking required. Harry's also recognizes there are different kinds of shavers, so they offer different plans. Or you can build your own to suit you. No matter what plan you use or build, Harry's comes through for you. That's another way Harry's has spoiled me. And like I said before, I want them to spoil you too. Go to harrys.com right now, pick your razor, pick your blades, pick your shave cream, and get $5 off your first order with the code MacVoices. You're going to love the Harry's experience, and you can save the trip to the pharmacy for when you're sick, not when you need shaving supplies. $5 off your first order at harrys.com with the code MacVoices. Do it now and let me know how you like Harry's gear. I think you'll love it. Thanks to Harry's for their great shaves and for their support of MacVoices. I can speculate that it's got to be a rather expensive proposition to keep up with all the lenses, even if you just limit yourself to the most popular cameras. So for an app that doesn't generate a lot of revenue, there just may be a business reason that they didn't.
And I think that makes sense, because if you look at their raw profile, they're always a little bit behind Adobe on keeping up with the raw profiles. Again, that's another labor-intensive activity. So I think your guess is probably a pretty good one. And guessing that there's a money reason when it comes to Apple is probably not a bad guess anyway.
Yeah, that money's coming from somewhere. There's no question.
Yeah, exactly.
So you hinted at what we're going to get, and I'm kind of intrigued by that. Do you mean what we're going to get from Apple, what we're going to get in Lightroom, or what we're going to get just as the whole photo technology world moves forward?
Well, what we're going to get from Apple is, I think, very interesting, and it's going to be fun to watch it unfold. But one of the things that we're waiting for in Aperture and iPhoto too, for that fact, was this total integration of the photo ecosystem. It's been clunky. I mean, yes, they have PhotoStream and iCloud, and yes, iPhoto or Aperture can capture stuff off PhotoStream, but it's all kind of kludgy and not really very Apple-esque. So we knew that they wanted to get to the situation where you take a picture with your iPhone, play with it a little bit on your iPhone, and then you open up your Mac, and there there in Photos is your picture, and you can pick up right where you left off. That kind of thing, along with all the other benefits, including archival, that come from just a seamless integration. And so I think part of their motivation for moving forward with Photos is that they just looked at the whole situation, felt like we need to write software from the ground up to really do what we want to do the way that we want to do it, the Apple way, which is a good way, right? It's a way where when it's working right, we don't have to think about it, and when we don't have to think about it, that's usually a pretty good way to back up your photos and work on your stuff. So I think that's the point that they got to, and I think they felt that way about Final Cut too, in all honesty, when that happened. And we're going to benefit from that if we're in the Apple ecosystem. If you're the type of user that uses an iPhone, an iPad, a Mac, and that is your world, then I think moving forward into Yosemite and Photos and all these new APIs they've written, one of the things that we don't know yet is what third-party developers are going to do with the Photos app, because as I understand it, Apple will make available APIs to develop tools and so forth that will plug right into the application. Now we've seen great success with the App Store on the iPhone, and how that has made our iPhone such a useful device. I can only imagine what people will do when it comes to photography tools that plug directly into Photos in Yosemite. So, I mean, we don't even know, what we're in for yet, but, chances are it's going to be pretty good.
You brought up Final Cut again, and I also think about the pages and the Keynote rewrites, and the fact that they did seem to learn from the Final Cut issue and say, okay, we're going to give you the new version, but we're going to leave the old version there. So if it's not up to speed, if the new one isn't up to speed for you, then keep on using the old one. And at some point, it won't be upgraded. But I keep wondering if that may not be what's going on here. One of the criticisms that does seem to get leveled against Adobe, and I've been one to level it, I know sometimes out of sheer frustration, is that they're a little menu happy over there. I mean, I love you guys, but you guys are menu happy, and you have to wonder if they are just constantly not rewriting from the ground up, but adding things, sticking things on, making it, trying to do it that way. And at this point, maybe for a software that is supposed to be this powerful, it makes a lot of sense just to do a ground up rewrite, take some time, get it so it's working properly, and then jettison the old.
It takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of guts to do that. But, let me tell you this, if I could get a couple of the programmers that are working on the Photoshop project and buy them a beer and say, if you had the opportunity to scuttle all that spaghetti code you're stuck with in Photoshop right now and start from ground zero, would you do it? And I think a lot of people would. I think being able to stop patching holes and be able just to build a new place is very exciting. And but like I said at the top here, it takes a lot of guts to do that. Apple has that kind of, they have that kind of intestinal fortitude.
And they've shown that.
Yeah.
multiple
Yeah.
times now. So
Yeah.
it could be very interesting to announce that Aperture is going to be, and this is all pure speculation, folks, so don't take my word or Derrick's word for it. But
Absolutely.
on the other hand, I'm not sure that I wouldn't. In fact, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to wait because I know Aperture will be supported at least into Yosemite, if not through it. I'll have a chance to get a look at the Photos app. I get to keep a few more presidents in my wallet until I can make a final, intelligent, informed determination instead of just running off screaming and in panic and jumping ship.
Yeah. First of all, I doubt that they're going to charge for Yosemite. I don't know if there's been anything official about that, but I would imagine they're not going to charge for it. They're not going to charge us for photos. I think it's going to be part of it all. They're going to continue to do raw updates system-wide, which means those raw updates that they do for new cameras that come out should work in Aperture and iPhoto if you're still using them, right? Because it's a system-wide update, just like it'll work in Preview. And they haven't been that speedy with raw updates anyway, but we'll get there. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to cost you a lot. Our Aperture libraries and our iPhoto libraries will open in Photos. One thing that, when we get closer that I'm going to look at is a lot of times when, you open an existing library in a newer version of the app, it updates that library and then you can't open it back in older versions. So we're going to look closely at that because it may be wise to make a copy of your Aperture library, then open that in Photos, see how you like it, still having your existing Aperture workflow safe and sound, while you experiment. So we'll be looking closer at that. But the fact of the matter is that your Aperture library, your iPhoto library will open in Photos. I mean, I know there's going to be some work and some transition here, but on the other hand, it's kind of exciting. I mean, I want to see how this is going to play out. And, and I have as much at stake here as anyone in terms of, my photos.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you. And of course, I always think it's very naive of any of us to say, I'm going to use this software today and I'm going to use this until the day I die. I mean, it just, there's no way. So sooner or later, you're going to have to transition through everything. I don't know how exactly it's going to be, but it's just the way it is. Think what you were using 5 years, 10 years ago.
Oh, God. I don't want to go back.
Exactly.
I don't want to go back. And at the same time, with all of this, it is disruptive. But disruption is evolution in the game that we're in right now, and we're changing as photographers too. And I think we have to acknowledge that we're part of the reason why this change is coming. The way that we use our cameras and the way that we process our images and the way that we share stuff and all of that is changing. And to some degree, Apple, wisely so, wants to stay ahead of that. Wants to stay ahead of what we're doing. So suddenly, I mean, the last thing that I think any Apple user wants is to feel like they're outdated. And that's the way I was feeling a little bit with Aperture because they hadn't gone to version 4. So this feels better to me than sitting around waiting for version 4 for the rest of my life. It's like waiting for the phone that's never going to ring.
Yeah, interesting perspective and a good one, because I know exactly what you mean. I'm not near the Aperture user you are, but at the same time, I was looking for updates and wondering what's going to happen and how. So,
Yeah. I mean, how long have we had Aperture 3? I mean, it's literally been years, and that's too long. In all honesty, that's just too long. But they're trying to. I'm sure they're trying to figure out how this is all going to work. It's not an easy problem. we can sit here and say all we want, but we're not the guys that have our neck on the block here.
Well, I guess we're all going to make our own decisions, but I'm with you. I think I'm more inclined to wait and see, and then make a fully informed decision. And just any work that I put into my Aperture collection is going to, I'll just deal with it when the time comes.
Yeah, I've been thinking, okay, what am I going to do? Because I have this big library that's archived on a Drobo, Thunderbolt Drobo. So, and I'm really toying with the idea of just putting a workstation to that Drobo that has my whole existing Aperture library, everything right there, all accessible, and then just kind of letting that be what it is, and then maybe on my laptop, play with the new technologies and see what I think of them. So I'm still kind of trying to figure out my approach too, but this is all kind of fun stuff, really. I mean, this is what I like to do anyway.
Yeah, if you can get over the idea of disruption, you're right. It can be fun because you just don't know what you're going to discover along the way.
Exactly. And I'm really looking forward to this. I mean, I want integration. I just did a test of Lightroom Mobile when I was in Maui. So I set up a few collections in my Lightroom library, and I synced them with my iPad. And then my goal was, while I was in Hawaii, all the new stuff would go into Lightroom Mobile, and the idea being that when I came home, it would all be there, right? Because it would sync through Creative Cloud, and all the work that I did on rating my images and image editing them in Hawaii would just automatically be in my Lightroom library. So I like that way of working, which is the direction that Apple's going, only even more so. And I'm writing a review on that whole process, and there were some major hiccups. It was not, in my opinion, up to the Apple way of doing things. So I want to see what Apple's going to do when they get their swing at the plate.
Well, and I guess we really don't have that long to wait if you think about it. Yosemite's supposed to be coming before the end of the year, so sit and wait.
Yeah. Now, remember, this is going to be this is a big integrated rollout. So iPhoto for iOS is going away. So there's going to be, I guess, photos there, or however that's going to work, and then iPhoto, and then Aperture. So when we see iOS 8, which will come before Yosemite, we're going to see our first glimmer of what's going on here. I'm sure there'll be a little bit of clunkiness there because the transition won't be complete yet. But so the fun will begin this fall, and then it will roll into next year. And then I'd say about definitely by this time next year we'll have a pretty good idea of what we think about all this.
In the meantime, go shoot something.
Go take pictures. Yeah. Certainly don't sit around and worry about this.
Yeah, because you always have the pictures to work with, no matter what you're looking at.
Oh, yeah. You're always going to have your photos. And I just, I've been out shooting all summer. And, we have to remember that's the part of photography that's the magic, right? Is out there, wherever you are. With your camera, and trying to capture something that's interesting or compelling or beautiful.
Derrick, bring us up to date on the Derrick Story empire.
Yeah,
because there seems to be a lot going here. The Digital Story, the Nimble Photographer, Lynda.com, workshops. And I'm sure I've missed stuff. And then, oh, by the way, you're a photographer too. So
yeah, well, it's all hooked together. It's all hooked together. So, which is, I guess, definition of an empire. It's a very small empire, but it's a fun one. It's a fun one because it's a one-man show, right? I'm in charge of it, so that's the part I like. But the Digital Story, that's kind of the hub. That everything hangs off, and it's doing well. The podcast has been doing great lately. And, a lot of times during the summer, numbers will dip a little bit because people are doing stuff. But the podcast has actually been gaining over the summer, which, is very exciting. And I do that once a week, and I've worked hard on it. We've upgraded it a couple times, and I think it's a good half-hour show every Tuesday. And then the Nimble Photographer is, that's me being out there traveling as light as possible, and thanks to Apple and Olympus and Panasonic and all those people that are producing, high quality gear in smaller packages that are connected. I'm just carrying around a nice little light bag, which makes enjoying the world out there a lot more fun. And there's lots to talk about there. And then Lynda has kept me busy lately. And I have a lot of new titles on Lynda. How to shoot high school senior portraits, how to back up your mobile photos and protect them, how to rescue images off a memory card that's gone south on you, update to iPhoto that's coming out. Maybe.
Yeah.
And but iPhoto's going to stay, so I think we'll put that out. But that's fun, and we're already working on what we're going to do with photos and the transition from Aperture and iPhoto to photos and all that kind of stuff. So I anticipate being busy with them for some time too. And then I have my clients, and my clients, that's my street cred. That it's great to write about being a photographer and all that, but if you're not shooting and not being a photographer, then I don't think your street cred is as good as it could be. And so I work hard to keep that up too.
And the workshops. I have to tell you, I'm a subscriber to the Digital Story podcast, and thanks, Derrick, you've cost me some money along the way. But the workshops always sound like they're so much fun, and people get so much out of them.
They are, and they're popular. I keep them small, but that's the beauty, right? Is having this small kind of where you only have 8 or 9 photographers, and we have a very, very fun full day each day of the workshop, and we shoot and we share and we work with models, and I teach people how to work with models, and we do landscape, and we go places, and it's just an enjoyable experience. And I think for me, what makes a workshop so rewarding is that it's people who have a shared interest able to get together, just think about their passion for a couple days, not worry about what's happening in the outside world, and share that with other people who have that same passion. And you just watch that happen over the course of the workshop, and it's great. You can't do that online or any other way. You have to get together and hang out. And so I will keep doing the workshops for years to come. The new schedule for next year will come out probably in November. And so that'll be on the Digital Story.
Good. And folks, you really need to go and check everything out, but especially that if you're serious about photography. Derrick not only puts on, from what I've heard, because I've never done one, but not only a lot of great photographic knowledge, but just a terrific experience top to bottom.
Yeah.
So
we got to get you out here for one of these, Chuck.
I know.
Frederick came to one. He was wanting to. He kept saying when I was on, TWIP, he kept going, I got to come to one. And finally, he came out, Frederick Van Johnson came out to one, and it was a blast having him here. So you got to come out. We'll treat you well.
Believe me, I feel like I need to get some of my skills up a little bit so I don't completely embarrass myself. But yeah, one of these days, I promise I will.
And then once you're here, you can just hop right on over to Hawaii.
That was dirty.
Yeah,
you're about to. Yeah, see, he's going to cost me more money, folks.
I'm going to cost you a lot more.
Yeah, but it'll be fun. It'll be fun. I also, we talked about Lynda. There is an Aperture course on Lynda as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
I have a number of them, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, and Aperture is not going away, and those courses are going to continue to be helpful to folks. But there's the basic, essential training, which really has almost everything you need to know. But then I did little specialty courses like portrait retouching in Aperture or commercial product retouching that show you some of those tricks I was telling you about, like the vignette tool and so forth. And those are really nice, and they're only like 2 hours long or something. And you watch them in little movies, just a little bit at a time, and then you move on to the next thing. So there's a lot of great training there waiting for you. And we're going to continue to make sure that everyone has everything they need to know moving forward too.
And the great thing about those courses on Lynda is that you buy the membership over whatever time period you want, and you can not just don't just have to watch the Aperture. Maybe you want to go and check out some Lightroom stuff to kind of feel for it. And then anything else that happens to be there that you have an interest in, it's all there. It's not like you're buying a course that may go out of date eventually. You get access to everything.
It's crazy how much stuff is in there. I mean, it's getting to the point just about anything you want to know related to, computer or photography is in there. Yeah. And we do have to update them. We do. It's hard. Some things change a lot. Like my Flickr course has just been tough to keep updated because darn Yahoo, just like every other week, they change their mind on how they're going to, do that app. But a lot of the other stuff, like the Aperture stuff, is, I only have to update that like once a year or so.
Derrick, there are always a million topics we could cover. You got to come back, and I don't know which one we'll take first, but there are a lot of things I'd love to talk to you about.
Well, there's going to be a lot going on, so we can just like roll the dice and see, what's hottest. But I'd love to come back, and it's always great chatting with you, Chuck.
Great. It's good to see you. Thanks so much for the time.
All righty. Talk to you soon.
Folks, that's Derrick Story. Check him out at thedigitalstory.com. As he said, that's where everything is for all his efforts. And, of course, hang with us until we get the Photos app from Apple, and we'll see how it goes. Until the next time, and as always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Camera work by John Zakowski of Azimuth Productions Video San Francisco at videosanfrancisco.com. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, app.net, Google+, and Facebook. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the MacVoices Dispatch, to stay up to date with all the latest MacVoices news from our front page or at macvoices.com/newsletter. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com.